We have new member classes here 3 times a year, and we're just about to have one for anybody who may be looking for a church home. I'll be facilitating a class the last 2 Sundays of this month, the last 2 Sundays in October. And if you would like to participate, call the church office or email me. We need a number because it's the only free meal you'll get here at the church, but our hospitality team prepares a lunch for us, and we need to have a count. But if you don't have a church home, we'd love to have you here. The October newsletter is on our website now, filled with lots of wonderful information. If you don't have a computer and you need a hard copy, we have them back in the narthex. I'll never forget the first year we did this 11 or 12 years ago. We started doing God on Broadway services. And in that series, we did Fiddler on the Roof. And after the service, a visitor came up to me and said, "This was incredible. And so how many Sundays do you do Fiddler on the Roof?" I said, "No, you don't understand. We do another show next Sunday." She couldn't believe it. And so there's a lot of work that goes on with this behind the scenes, especially with the set and costumes. And they're not only working on this one now, they're working on the ones in the future. And Linda Combs heads that up, but she's got the largest crew of helpers we've ever had here for this year. I want to read their names real quick. Linda heads them up. And then we have Billy Aiken, Linda Aiken, Chris Beaver, Cheri Coffey, Mary Ann Donahue, Ray Ellis, Mary Flanders, Pat Fraker, Rick Fraker, Steve Gagne, Sally Gillick, Kim Johnson, Dottie Klutz, Lynn Lord, Laura Lindsay, Martha Parsons, Wendy Mason, Rhonda Reed, Steve Reed, Patty Steinhauser, Tim Steinhauser, and Janet Wagner. I hope I got everyone, but give them a hand. And the best part of it is they're having a good time doing it. I'll come to the church and go upstairs, and it looks like Santa's helpers all in there having a good time telling stories and painting and such. I also want to thank Deborah and Lawrence Staub for recording the service for us, and Pat Prokop for editing it and putting it on the internet. So people even in other countries email us and say, we enjoy your services so much. So thank you for getting the word out. And of course, our Frank Ramsey for helping us with all of our promotional materials. Give them a thank you too, if you will. The musical Pippin opened on Broadway in 1972. It ran for about 5 years and had almost 2,000 performances. The original cast included John Rubinstein, who played Pippin, Ben Vereen, who played the leading player, and Irene Ryan, better known as Granny on the Beverly Hillbillies, as Pippin's grandmother. In 1983, I was in New York pursuing an acting career and got cast in the title role of Pippin. It was produced at a professional theater in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a theater called Theater by the Sea. I really liked the girl who played opposite me and ended up marrying her. And many of you know that story, so I'm not going to share it again with you today. But it was an amazing set of circumstances and synchronicity. If you're visiting and have never heard the story and would like to know it, I have a book for you. The story is in a book called Wow Moments, and you can get it on the internet or, lo and behold, here at the church. Since we were using Pippin as one of the God on Broadway services this year, some of our church members watched a DVD version of the Broadway stage production, and there are some scenes in the show where Pippin goes shirtless, and they said, "Billy, are you telling me that you went around dressed like that or not dressed on stage?" They couldn't get over it, and I understand what they're talking about, because if you looked at me today, it wouldn't be a pretty sight. But I told them, yes, that's what I did, and I reminded them that that was a very long time ago. We thought it'd be fun for you to see pictures from that 19 1983 production, so there are some pictures in the social hall that you can see during coffee hour. You know, one of the great things about live theater is that no two shows are just alike. I remember in the second act of the show, Cheri and I had a very dramatic kiss. It's one of those kisses that comes out of left field, surprises everyone. I'm walking by Cheri, and all of a sudden she grabs my arm and gently brings me to her, and we look lovingly into each other's face, and then she plants the big kiss on me. It was one of those kisses where the audience goes, ooh, ah. You literally hear them going, ooh, ah. By the way, I could tell when Cheri kissed me that there was a little something extra going on there. I know that Cheri's a very good actress, but it was obviously that this wasn't all an act. And then you had the audience going, ooh and ah. So this was quite a wonderful moment for me, my favorite part of the show. So one night she whips me around and starts her big kiss, but instead of oohs and ahs, we hear giggling. Giggling? Why are they giggling? And the giggles turned into laughter, belly laughs. And as we are having this touching, passionate moment, the whole audience is roaring, and we're wondering what's going on. Is my zipper down or what, you know? The scene before our kiss had involved a lamb, a live lamb. I carried this lamb and gave it to Cheri's son in the show. Cheri's character had been married but became a widow and had a little boy. What she and I did not know is that as we were kissing, the lamb had escaped from backstage, had come back onto the stage. It stopped about 5 feet from my bare feet and decided that it had to go to the bathroom. So as Cheri and I were having this very dramatic kiss, the lamb was squatting and dropping his business right beside us. And as Cheri and I are kissing, out of the corner of my eye, I see the guy who played the narrator, the leading player, walk out onto the stage. He's got a paper towel in his hand. He walks over to the lamb, picks it up with his left arm and holds it, bends down and scoops up the poop with the paper towel in his right. And before he walks off stage, he looks out at the audience and says, "Show business is my life." He was quick. He was quick. There's nothing like live theater. Charlemagne really did have a son named Pippin, was his oldest boy, but the musical really has little to do with the historical Pippin or Pippin. The character Pippin is really supposed to represent us, you and me, every single person who is born and wants to live a meaningful life. The show is a parable set in the time of Charlemagne. And so Pippin goes on this quest, searching for fulfillment, the thing in life that is completely fulfilling. He relates this thing he's searching for to freedom. Rivers belong where they can ramble. Eagles belong where they can fly. I've got to be where my spirit can run free. Got to find my corner of the sky. And so Pippin starts on his journey, and he tries everything in his desire to find fulfillment. Fame, fortune, power, sex, drugs, you name it. And all of these things are fun for him for a while, but eventually their colors begin to fade, and Pippin is left unfulfilled. He seeks out the advice of his grandmother, who he's always loved and admired. In her wisdom, she tells him to stop worrying about it, that life is too short, and that he needs to start living in the moment. Be present. We have a great benediction here that we like to say, life is short. So gladden the hearts of those who travel the way with us. Be swift to love and make haste to be kind. Ironically, Irene Ryan, who uttered those words to Pippin on Broadway, had a stroke during a performance and died 4 weeks later. Life is too short to be obsessed with worry. We know it. Oh, we know it. And yet we still struggle with it. The word worry comes from an Old English word, wyrgan, W-Y-R-G-A-N, which means to strangle, to choke. And that's what we're literally doing to ourselves, isn't it? When we worry, we're strangling ourselves. Worry chokes off our enjoyment of life. It strangles our peace of mind and hurts us emotionally, mentally, physically. Charles Mayo, co-founder of the Mayo Clinic, said, worry affects the circulation, the heart, the glands, the whole nervous system, and profoundly affects a person's health. And so perhaps the first thing we need to do in order to overcome worry is to remind ourselves what Jesus said, that worrying won't do us a bit of good. In fact, it will harm us. Mark Twain said, I've seen many troubles in my time, only half of which ever came true. It's more like 80 to 90% of what we worry about never happens. So another thing we can do to help us with our worry habit is to remember that most of the things we worry about never, ever happen usually. Or they are things we can't do anything about anyway. And so let us remember the words of Jesus and Pippin's grandmother, do not worry, live in the moment, be present, and life will be more fulfilling. After Pippin leaves his grandmother, he continues to spiral down. He becomes so depressed about not finding fulfillment that he gets very sick and almost dies. But he is rescued and nursed back to health by a woman named Catherine, a young widow who has a little boy named Theo. And they live on a farm, and so they take Pippin onto their farm and nurse him to health. And in time, the three of them, Pippin, Catherine, and Theo, develop a very special relationship. And of course, Catherine and Pippin, as in most musicals, the two leads fall in love. Pippin seems happy, but along with this new life comes responsibilities. He has to feed the chickens and the hogs. He has to fix the leaking roofs. And when Theo's pet duck dies, Pippin tries to console the unconsolable. It's not fun. Realizing that he has not completed his mission on finding the thing that is completely fulfilling, he leaves Catherine and Theo and contemplates committing suicide. And now we realize why the chorus of players had started the show by singing, "We've got magic to do just for you, miracle place to play." You see, they had known something that Pippin had yet to discover, but was now discovering, that fulfillment is only an illusion, magic. Pippin's search for fulfillment was doomed from the start. But these players, which represents Pippin's internal voices, tell him the only way to find fulfillment, the only way to discover peace, is to kill himself. But just as Pippin is about to take his own life, he has an incredible revelation. He sings these words, "I'm not a river or a giant bird that soars to the sea. And if I'm never tied to anything, I'll never be free." If I'm never tied to anything, I'll never be free. Pippin returns to Catherine and Theo, and he's asked how he feels now that he has made this choice, this commitment. And his response is the very last line of the show. This is what he says. "How do I feel? Trapped. but happy. Trapped but happy. Pippin discovers the paradox of commitment. You know, when I think of commitment, red flags go up. When I think of commitment, I think of being bound to something, being tied down, being trapped, not having freedom. It's like death to me. But when I think of the things that I have been most committed to, I realize they are the things that have been the most meaningful for me, the most life-giving, the most fulfilling, the most freeing. The musician whose fingers glide up and down the keys of the piano so freely is the pianist who practices the scales daily. The opera singers at our voice festival who open their mouths and hit high C's as though they are yawning are the singers who have had voice lesson after voice lesson after voice lesson. The successful craftsman or business person is the person who has been dedicated to learning his or her craft or trade. People who are committed to small groups or support groups. People who are committed to sharing their lives and listening to other people's stories often are able to experience healing, are often able to take down their mask and experience a freedom they've never experienced before. Commitment can lead to life, freedom, healing. The paradox of commitment. When the people of Israel are about to enter the promised land, Moses can't enter it with them, and so he wants to offer them one last word, one last speech. And what does he tell them? The paradox of commitment. He says, you want to experience life? Then do this. Be committed to this. Be committed to loving God and following God's commandments. And you will have life. Jesus said the same thing. I've come so you can experience life in its fullness. The very thing Pippin was looking for. Moses told people you experience life by loving God and by following the commandments. Jesus basically said the same thing. He said the two most important commandments are love God and love others. Is that going to make you rich? Is that going to make you famous? Is that going to solve all your problems? Of course not. But Pippin discovered what I hope the rest of us already know. Having things or doing things doesn't bring ultimate peace or fulfillment. Never will. What Moses was saying and what Jesus was saying and what Pippin discovered is that relationships are what brings you peace and fulfillment. And especially the most important relationship, our relationship with God. The great Catholic priest Henry Nouwen loved the circus. He especially loved a German trapeze troupe called the Flying Roadleys. In one of his books, Nouwen writes, I will never forget how enraptured I became when I first saw the Roadleys move through the air, flying and catching as elegant dancers. The next day, I returned to the circus to see them again and introduced myself as one of their great fans. They invited me to attend their practice session, gave me free tickets, asked me to dinner, and suggested I travel with them for a week in the near future. I did, and we became good friends. One day, I was sitting with Roadley, the leader of the troupe, talking about flying. He said, as a flyer, I must have complete trust in my catcher. The public might think that I am the great star of the trapeze, but the real star is Joe, my catcher. He has to be there for me with split-second precision and grab me out of the air as I come to him in the long jump. How does it work? Nouwen asked. The secret, said Roadley. The secret is that the flyer does nothing, and the catcher does everything. When I fly to Joe, I have simply to stretch out my arms and hands and wait for him to catch me and pull me safely over the apron behind the catch bar. You do nothing now and ask? Nothing, replied Roadley. The worst thing a flyer can do is to try to catch the catcher. I am not supposed to catch Joe. Joe's task is to catch me. If I grab Joe's wrist, I might break them, or he might break mine, and that would be the end for both of us. A flyer must fly, and a catcher must catch. And the flyer must trust with outstretched arms that his catcher will be there for him. When Roadley said this with so much conviction, the words of Jesus flashed through Henry Nouwen's mind. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Dying, Nouwen writes, is trusting in the catcher. To care for the dying is to say, don't be afraid. Remember that you are the beloved child of God. God will be there when you make your long jump. Don't try to grab him. He will grab you. Just stretch out your arms and hands and trust, trust, trust. The lessons from the flying trapeze pertain not only to the dying experience, but also to the life experience. In order to experience peace and fulfillment, we must trust God's love so we can let go and experience freedom, knowing God is there to catch us. The great theologian Paul Tillich said this: simply accept the fact that you have been accepted. Accepted by that which is bigger than you. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted, not because of what you've done or what you will do, but simply because you are, and because God is love and wants you to be involved and wants to be involved in your life so that you can have freedom and fulfillment. 'Twas battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it scarcely worth his while to waste much time on the old violin, but held it up with a smile. What am I bidding, good folks? He cried. Who'll start the bidding for me? $1, $1, then $2, only $2, $2, and who'll make it $3? $3 once, $3 twice, going for $3. But no, from the room far back, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. Then, wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening the loose strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as a caroling angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What am I bidding now for the old violin?" And he held it up with a bow. $1,000, and who'll make it $2? $2,000, and who'll make it $3? $3,000 once, $3,000 twice, and going and gone, said he. The people cheered. But some of them cried, "We do not quite understand what changed its worth." Swift came the reply, "The touch of the master's hand." And many a person with life out of tune and battered and scattered with sin is auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He's going once, he's going twice, and he's almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul and the change that's wrought by the touch of the Master's hand. That's the magic. That's the miracle. That the great creator of this incredible universe loves us more than we can imagine, wants to be in relationship with us, wants to give us life in abundance. Amen and amen.